A loved one just died. There are properties left behind. Do you have any idea how to get started? Losing a loved one is a terrible experience, especially when the loss is sudden, unexpected, and possibly preventable. Because of this pandemic, we've been losing so many loved ones, like grandparents, parents, uncles, friends, cousins, acquaintances. These days, we seem to be extending condolences to our Facebook friends and acquaintances at least once a week.
When there's a loss in a family, the last thing we want to do is think about inheritance, settling of their estate, and moving on with our lives. But at the end of the day, settling their estate can't be avoided. Our question for today comes from Sarah C., who asks, Attorney, my grandfather just died, and my mom and her siblings, who are all in the US, have assigned me to take care of transferring everything to us, including three properties. I don't know what to do. It seems like there's so much I need to do and I feel overwhelmed. Do you have any tips on what I should do first? How can I start this process? If you or your family is in a similar situation as Sarah, stay tuned as we answer her question.
This video is brought to you by the Estate Settlement Guide, the fastest way to orient surviving family members when a loved one passes away. You will learn the basics of succession to know who can inherit and how much. It will guide you through the next steps your family needs to take so you don't incur penalties and you transfer the property to the heirs properly. Protect your family legacy. Avoid unnecessary penalties. Go to info.legalguide.ph/estate to learn more. Welcome to Legal Guide Philippines, where we simplify the law to help you make better choices. I'm Attorney Ramon Ramirez, and I'm with my partner,
Attorney Erwin Zagala. So today, we're talking about estate settlement. Particularly, we're talking about what Sarah can do first. Because she's right. There seems to be a lot and she's feeling overwhelmed. No wonder. So, Attorney Ramon, how can we help Sarah?
Okay, sige. So let's start with some context setting.
Mhm.
Okay. First, what's happening here? Sarah's grandfather died.
Mhm.
Okay. So, by the way, when somebody dies, we call that person in the legal profession. We call them the decedent. Okay. Decedent. Yan. Okay. So at this point, the wake is finished, or tapos na yung wake and the burial. No? So now it's time for the family to move on. And what did Sarah say? She said that her grandfather left three properties.
Okay.
Tama? And other properties probably. And now she wants to transfer them to whoever it is entitled to. Okay? Or sino yung mga tagapagmana. Okay? So this process of transferring the properties to those left behind is what we generally call estate settlement. Okay, so I hope that's clear, guys. Now, what is estate settlement, or what is an estate to begin with? Do you have any idea, Attorney Erwin?
Estate is yung ipapamana sa
Yes.
tagapagmana.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So, tama yan, no? But just to give you an idea, it's basically everything left behind by our decedent, or the person who died.
Operative word being everything,
Mhm.
including properties, tangible or intangible. And
Correct.
kasama rin dyan yung rights and obligations.
That is correct, Attorney Erwin.
Everything talaga.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is the estate. No? So because there's a misconception that it just includes physical things. No? So it includes everything. No? So now estate settlement can be a short or a long process for Sarah, depending on many variables. Like ano ba? Let's say the extent of the estate, or how big it is, how much is inside the estate. Diba? Obviously, pag maraming properties and iba-ibang lugar, then obviously that may take longer than an estate with only one piece of property.
That's a problem, but it's a good problem.
It
Diba?
could be a good problem. Yes.
It
oo.
can serve to protect kasi the heirs and the inheritors of
Right.
the estate.
Correct. And another factor which will probably determine how long the process would be the location of the properties. Like we said, pag iba-iba yung lugar, then we may have to visit all these different places.
Because there's paperwork
Yes.
that's required.
Right. Okay. There could be issues with the titles. Like let's say hindi pa naita-transfer sa pangalan ng decedent yung property.
Or another one is nawawala po.
Oo, pwede rin.
Ah.
Yeah, these are typical problems. And a factor to consider is the existence of a will. Okay, our last will and testament, because that will change how the process will go, no? If that exists. Um, Sometimes another factor would be yung issues with among those who will inherit, or nag-aaway-away sila.
So they are their own worst enemy. In some
Right.
cases.
Yes, yes,
In some
and
cases.
which can really, really prolong the process if there's fighting among those who will inherit, and especially issues on who gets what and how much who will get, diba? Or how much one of them will get versus the other, no? So these are things that can determine how long the process will be, Sarah. So please take note of that. Hopefully, these don't exist, no? Yeah.
If ever they're present, hindi naman siya parang deal breaker.
Yes.
It's surmountable.
Of course.
Kaya naman. But again, it's the amount of time na hahaba kasi to get it all sorted out.
Yes, correct. So now going back to Sarah's question, what are the things that she can do first? Okay, so we identified five things. Let's start with the first one. The first one is determine the deadline. Ano ba yung deadline na yan? Attorney
Meron pala
Erwin?
yan?
Oo, may deadline pala. No? So, yes, there is a deadline, and this deadline is for the estate tax. Okay, so what is the estate tax? The estate tax is the tax you have to pay. So it is a transfer tax that you have to pay for the privilege of transferring the properties to the heirs. Okay, or the estate to the heirs.
So, linawin ko, Attorney Ramon, ha? It's the privilege of transferring.
Yes.
Hindi siya tax dahil namatay.
No, no.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a transfer tax. So that's what you call the estate tax. Before, I think they used to call it the inheritance tax. Now, estate tax. Okay, so when is the deadline? Why do we need to determine the deadline for the estate tax, Attorney Erwin?
Pag lumagpas ka kasi, may penalty siya.
Yes, if the estate tax is not paid on time, our law provides that there are penalties. Okay, so you will have a surcharge, you will have an interest, and administratively, you may be charged also with compromise penalties. No, so these penalties are not small. No, these can really affect how much you're going to have to pay at the end of the day. No, so we don't like missing that deadline when it comes to estate tax. Okay, I hope that's clear. Now, what are the deadlines, Attorney Erwin? So if our decedent, or the person who passed on or namatay, died before January 1, 2018, then the deadline for paying the estate tax is 6 months from the date of death. Okay, so that's 6 months from the date of death. Remember that. Now, if the decedent died January 1, 2018 onwards, then the deadline for paying the estate tax is not 6 months anymore, but it's actually 1 year from the date of death. No?
Wait, Attorney Ramon, I have a question. I noticed na if before January 1, 2018, 6 months na right now. So, subject na to penalties.
Yeah.
Baka sobrang laki na ng penalties kasi a lot of time has passed.
That's right. That's right. So if you're in a situation where your decedent or your loved one died before January 1, 2018, obviously it's already what year is it now? Then obviously the 6 months is already passed. No? So paso na yan, and there is definitely penalties. No? Our law will provide or impose penalties for that late payment or late reporting. No? So, but there's good news, Attorney Erwin.
What's the good news?
There is what we call an estate tax amnesty. Okay, and the deadline for the estate tax amnesty is up to June 14, 2023. Okay, so originally it was 2021, June 14, 2021. And our legislators were good enough to extend it. Now it's up to 2023.
It's definitely a big help for people in that situation.
Yes. Now, just a side note, what is the estate tax amnesty, and why would we want to apply for that? Remember when we talked about yung mga before January 1, 2018, diba? May penalties na yan. Okay? The rate for the estate tax, if your decedent died before January 1, 2018, is yung mataas pa. It was the graduated scale up to around 20%. So it's just a pretty big chunk of that go to taxes, no? But with the estate tax amnesty, the government said, okay, we'll waive yung penalties. Alam namin na you've lampas na kayo sa deadline, pero we just want you to report. So we'll waive those penalties, and you know what? We won't even impose that big graduated scale of up to 20%. will only impose an estate tax rate of 6%.
Wow.
Wow,
Diba?
diba? So, guys, if you're in that situation, please look into this. Go to Google, check the internet, learn more about the estate tax amnesty.
To be clear, this is not always available.
Yes.
It is only available until June 14, 2023.
Yes.
Okay.
After that, we don't know when the next one will be. Okay.
Mhm.
So, please make use of it.
Okay.
All right. So, what is this? So that's the first thing. No, determine the deadlines. Second, I want to advise Sarah. Determine the extent of the estate.
Gaano kalawak at gaano kalaki.
Yes,
Okay.
and gaano karami, no? So, know what you're really up against. Many times, people don't know or don't want to start estate settlement because what? They're afraid of the expenses for transferring the estate, or they feel like there will be so much to do.
Mhm.
Masyadong maraming gagawin. But actually, especially us, no, when we work with people, when we sit down with them and determine ano ba talaga ang extent ng estate, many times they find out that the amount or what needs to be done was a lot scarier in their heads rather than the actuality.
I think it really pays to have a third party
Mhm.
take a look at things with you. At least there's experience there, there's
Mhm.
objectivity, and then no emotions. Tingin lang tayo talaga kung ano yung data.
Yes, right. So, so how do you determine the extent of the estate? The first thing you do is you collate documents on the properties.
Mhm.
Okay, so in our experience, marami dito nagtatagal. No? When we do estate settlements, they collecting the documents on the properties. So, let's say the properties left behind by our decedent is real properties. What's real properties? Lupa, bahay, building, condo. Yeah, these are real properties or immovable properties, hindi magalaw. Okay? Usually, what are the proper documents for this, Attorney Irwin?
Tax declaration.
Tax declaration
Title.
and title. Yeah. So for condos, you call it condominium certificates of title
Mhm.
or transfer certificates of title or even original certificates of title if they have those, no? Okay, what about for other properties like shares of stock?
Well, stock certificate.
Stock certificates,
Mhm.
yan. And bank accounts, yeah, you'll have your documentation for bank accounts as well.
Checkbook,
Hmm,
diba?
pwedeng
Or bank
yan. Or bank,
statements.
or yung bank book, di ba?
Mm.
Uso pa ba yun? Passbook?
Sometimes.
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 Yun. So you can use that, no? And of course, personal properties. No? Documents on personal properties, like let's say for vehicles, your ORCRs, diba? And various other documents that can prove ownership by the decedent or to prove that the decedent owns those personal properties.
Mhm.
Okay? So the next step, once you collate all those documents and say, okay, these are all the properties left behind by our by our loved one, our decedent. The next step is really to value them.
Mhm.
Okay, the PIR would want you to value them as well. Now, we're not going to teach you here how to value them, but we invite you to look at Revenue Regulations 2-20, 12-2018 for that matter. No? 12-2018, and the BIR has provided their guidelines on how to value these kinds of properties.
Google lang ang katapat.
Google lang ang katapat,
Mhm.
okay? And you can even check the BIR website. They're very, they have all those already there, no?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's the second thing. Third is determine who are the heirs.
Heirs.
Mhm.
Heirs, not hairs.
Heirs, hindi
Heirs.
hairs. Oh, nakarinig ako ng ganun eh.
Silent H.
Oh,
Okay.
it's a silent H, guys. Okay, please. So determine who are the heirs. Okay. Um, and in relation to determining who are the heirs, it's important to first look at whether or not there's a will.
Okay.
Okay, because that will play into how we're going to treat the heirs. Okay, so check natin, is there a will or wala?
Mhm.
Okay, check natin, baka naman hindi will yan or maybe just a set of instructions.
Magkaiba po yun.
Oh, magkaiba rin yun. No?
Mhm.
We'll discuss wills in another episode. Okay, but for now, just determine if there's a will or not. Okay, once you've determined if there's a will or not, check, are there compulsory heirs?
Yes.
What are compulsory heirs? We've discussed this in another episode, but just to give you a brief background, compulsory heirs are the VIPs of succession.
Mhm.
Erwin, diba? So what does that mean? They are the heirs or the heirs? No, not heirs. They are the heirs who, whatever happens, they're supposed to receive something.
Kaya pala VIP.
Yes.
Kasama lagi sa usapan.
Tama.
Yan.
Okay, they're never excluded. Oh, well, there are exceptions to, there are ways to exclude them, but generally they're never excluded. So sino yung mga compulsory heirs? These are
Descendants.
descendants, pababa.
Ascendants. Oo.
Anak, apo,
Mhm.
ascendants, pataas,
Parents.
parents, grandparents,
Mhm.
yan. Grandparents sa tuhod, ano ba?
Mhm.
Tama ba? Oo, yun ang tawag. No? And also, ano pa? Surviving spouse.
Siyempre, mawawala ba naman sa usapan yan?
Oo, yung legit na spouse, ha? So, hindi pwedeng girlfriend, boyfriend, or matagal lang kinakasama. The law requires that it has to be a legal wife or legal husband.
Asan ang papel?
Yan, kailangan. Oo. Alright. Also, in addition to that, illegitimate children are also compulsory heirs.
Yes.
Okay, so
Contrary to the belief na yung iba kasi sinasabi, ampung ka lang,
Ay,
anak ka sa labas.
oo.
No,
Wala
no,
kang
no, no.
matatanggap.
No.
it's not like that.
Compulsory po yan.
Yes.
Sama po yan.
Okay, so just determine, no, at this point, Sarah, just determine whether or not they exist. Okay, that will be very important later on. Okay. Also, aside from your compulsory heirs, determine are there collateral relatives. Ano yung collateral relatives, Attorney Erwin?
Gilid.
Gilid. Okay, so hindi pa taas, hindi pa pababa.
Gilid.
Gilid. So kapatid, yan, uncle, tito, tita, yan, titas of Manila. Yan. So these are collateral relatives. And also, if there's a will, you may have to determine are there devicees or legatees. Legatees or legatees? Anyway, just determine who are these people. These are people mentioned in the will na hindi ka mag-anak or hindi compulsory heir na nakakatanggap ng something.
Alam mo, Sir
special
Yamon,
gift. No?
Napaka-complicated pakinggan yan. Alam mo kung anong magandang solution dyan?
Simplify mo.
Kung complicated yan para sa kanila, kumuha sila ng consultants who
Mm.
can determine with them how much each is supposed to get.
That's correct. That's correct.
You don't have to figure this out on your own. Totoo
Mhm.
lang. Succession law and the shares, they can be technical at times. So wag po kayong mahiya na humingi ng tulong if needed.
That's correct, Attorney Erwin. No, so those are determined. Just at this point, determine muna whether or not these people exist. Okay, Sarah. So next, let's go here. Next tip. Our fourth is determine now or appoint a person who can be the point person or somebody who is in charge. And why do we ask Sarah to do this, Attorney Erwin?
Well, for me, it's all about efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Para isa lang ang kausap, isa lang ang punong abala.
Yes, correct. No, so as opposed to there's so many, and we've experienced this when we were helping families with estate settlement. Ang daming kausap. No, that's really hard to do.
Just to share, kami, before we accept an engagement for estate settlement, one of the requirements, pili kayo.
Yes.
Sino yung representative? I don't want to spend time getting all of your schedules
Consensus
and
ng
consensus.
everyone. Ako just go only 1 point person.
Cannot work.
So generally, a point person or someone in charge is typically the executor or administrator. Okay, in case now we have these executors or administrators in cases where there is a will or we have a judicial settlement of estate. Okay, now guys, we can't just appoint an executor or administrator ng basta-basta. No, there are formalities in appointing these people, and generally they're appointed by the courts. Okay, so yung courts ang mag-appoint sa kanila.
Or akala nila magbobotohan lang.
Yeah, no, it's not like that. No, especially if it's a judicial settlement or there's a will involved. Okay, now if the circumstances under your circumstances do not warrant getting an administrator. Okay, so ano ba yung example niyan? Usually, mga extrajudicial settlements.
That means it's not in court.
Yes.
Nakakapag-usap naman yung mga...
You don't need to go to court to settle. Yan, okay? In which case, there's no will or it's not a judicial settlement. Then, you may have to appoint someone already. Okay? And now, who would you want to appoint? Appoint someone with leadership skills, who has leadership skills, the time, and resources to see this through. Okay? Last tip, for you, Sarah, is to look for an expert that you trust. Look for an expert that you trust and then ask about estate settlement. If you will DIY it or do it yourself, consult if you're going in the right direction. Diba? And what should you watch out for? Like with anything, there's really no substitute for experience, and advice coming from experience is what a consultant can offer. Okay? Now, Consultants can also assist you in actually doing the settlement. So in case the task is too overwhelming for the point person, there's still someone to assist you in settling the estate and move things forward.
Mhm.
Okay, so those are our 5 tips, Attorney Irwin.
Fantastic. Do you mind if I do a recap, Attorney Ramon?
No, go ahead.
So to recap, we talked about tips on how to get started with estate settlement. The first one is, of course, determine the deadline.
Yep.
Very important kasi may penalty po if you go beyond the deadline. Second tip is determine the extent of the estate. Siyempre, ano yung itatransfer mo kung di mo naiintindihan what you are talking about?
Mhm.
So determine the extent. Third is determine who are the heirs.
Mhm.
Sino ba yung paglilipatan? That
Right.
way, makapag-prepare kayo, makapag-usap. Number 4, appoint a point person or someone in charge. Napakaganda po ng sistema if only one person talks for the entire group. Very efficient. Correct, Attorney Ramon?
Yes.
And finally, if you need help, hindi po bawal magtanong, consult an expert or engage a consultant to help you with this. If you DIY it, if you know what you're doing, then fine, go ahead. However, if you're feeling lost, there's no shame in asking for help because this is really something technical.
Yes.
Mhm. If you want to learn more about succession and estates, please go to info.legalguy.ph/estate to learn more. If you want us to tackle your question in our show, go to legalguy.ph and click on the submit topic button. Next, we'd like to know what's your biggest takeaway from today's video. Write it down in the comments and let's talk about it. And if you feel we've earned a good rating, please give us a like and subscribe. It gives us feedback that we're doing a good job and encourages us to do more videos.
Yes. So, one last thing, guys. When a loved one dies, estate settlement is the last thing we will want to think about. We're still in the grieving stage, and all of a sudden, we're forced to shift gears and move on. To make matters worse, the process isn't simple and can be daunting. But this is something that needs to be accomplished however complicated it may be. In accomplishing a big project, start with knowing what you're really up against. Knowing your enemy puts you in a better position to fight it. Now, the road to anywhere starts from where you are. And to start, all you need to do is to take little consistent steps to move in the direction you want to go. Lastly, don't be afraid to ask for support. Asking for support is not a sign of weakness, but actually a sign of strength. So wasn't that simple? Now go make better choices.